Welcome to Dads and Dollars podcast with your host, Stanley Funches, certified financial planner, business owner, author, speaker, and father of three. Listen as Stanley shares his valuable insights around fatherhood and finances gained from over 20 plus years of experience. You'll hear stories, lessons learned, and the ups and downs he and his guests have encountered on their journeys as fathers, professionals, and business owners. These shared lessons will help provide you a path for financial independence while celebrating the challenges of being a dad. Thank you for joining the conversation. Here's your host, Stanley Funches.
Good day. Welcome to Dads and Dollars, the podcast where the perspective of fatherhood and finances are woven into any everyday life topics. My name is Stanley Funches. I'm a certified financial planner by profession and a father of three in this thing called life. We are glad you could join us for season 1, episode 5. And on this episode, we have a guest, Isaac Cooper. Isaac is a rising star in the financial services industry. He's doing big things, especially here in Birmingham, making a huge impact on the city and the people of the city. Isaac is currently the CEO of IMC Financial Consulting. He's also the founder of his alma mater's chapter of the Samford Black Alumni Association. He currently serves on Samford's board. And also, more importantly, he's the chairman of the board of directors of one of Birmingham's most prized possessions, the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute. So let's join and welcome Isaac Cooper to the show. Welcome, Isaac.
What's going on, brother?
Man, glad to have you. We know we've been talking about this for a while.
That's right.
Podcast is launched, and we're glad to have you on, man. We were just talking. I was just telling all your accolades and all those things. Look, one of the things that I've always, since the time I met you a few years ago, is admired is your organizational skills. So we talked about, you founding the Black Alumni Association at Samford, right? And then helping out with the Civil Rights Institute. What's the origin? Where did that come from with the organization? What do you think that's derived from? Your great organization, bringing people together for a mission and having to move forward in a positive way.
That's a really, really good question. So my trek to Birmingham came with getting a football scholarship to Samford. Shout out Pat Sullivan. So football was ultimately my end goal, my end game. What I immediately thought about, so in high school, my junior year or my 11th grade year, we went, I believe it was like 3-7. We had a really good team, but our record wasn't there. So coming into my senior year, I saw that there really wasn't enough communication amongst the team. So I remember I got everybody together to do a cookout so we could just start bonding and building that relationship. Long story short, we make the playoffs. We have a great season. And so that, I think that was probably the initial entry point of, all right, there is a common issue that I believe we have the resources to solve, but we're not all on the same page. So I would say that was probably that first entry point of trying to get something done.
Oh, man, that's great. That's great. Look, so, and I admire that part of you because, I guess in my 30 some odd years of being in professional business, there's probably two people that I highlight. One is Ed Fields. So shout out to Ed Fields. I mean, I've known Ed for probably, 15, 18 years now and just watched him navigate through this thing. And I just admire the way he can organize things, put things together, put the vision and execute, right? Execution is like one of the hardest things. People can have a vision, but who can cast a vision and then execute the vision?
Right.
And so that's that part for you, especially with the Black Alumni Association and then coming in and helping the Civil Rights Institute. That part for you, I think those skills show in what you've been able to, have a vision and execute it. So what besides the camaraderie, getting everybody on the same page, what else goes in that execution part for you?
Yeah, I would say a good bit of humility on the front end, knowing that you don't know everything, but you know what the end result needs to be. So even with the Black Alumni Association, having different professionals around me to be able to give insight, because I was very green in regards of bylaws and things of that nature. After our first board meeting, or even starting the Black Alumni Association, so Dr. Westmoreland, the previous president of the university, I remember speaking with him because after football ended, I really didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to tie a tie. I put my suit in the washing machine. I was very green when it pertained to just the professional industry. And so as I was getting introduced to different internships, I was, a little frustrated that I just couldn't talk to somebody Black to say, all right, how'd you put your tie on? Like, how did you navigate after college? What was the ways in which you were able to leverage your degree, and just, multitude of questions that you could ask someone based off of the commonality of just pigment, right? So from there, Dr. Westmoreland says, all right, we need to start a Black Alumni Association. And as I was able to get different board members involved, I saw the need of, all right, you need good talent. Of course, you need treasure, you need that type of, resources based off of what your end goal is. But you also need someone's time. And that element of course, beginning anything in that nonprofit realm, it's like, all right, look, I'm not making any money doing this. I'm still committed to this mission. But it was definitely a need to have just humility to say, all right, I need help. But knowing how to communicate to someone what you need, but also at the same time letting them know that they're a part of the solution as well. So I think that balance of, all right, this is where we're going, the how we're figuring out as we go, but being very, very clear on who needs to be a part of that initial process.
Yeah, and it's great, and you're great at putting people together, right? People together who have different skill sets, and then following you, right? Is that also part of the sports leadership, what you kind of acquired through the years of playing sports?
Definitely, especially the execution part, because on the ball field, you don't want to hear too much. So all that yapping, you're not even making your tackles out there. Like, all right, I want to see you lead by example. And so that was the way in which I played football, was just, all right, well, watch me do it, right? And naturally, it was very humbling to see people kind of yield to the words that I would say, because they would say, well, he's kind of deploying the results that we need to get done. And so I think that aspect of, that's one thing I'm not going to fall short on, is execution, right? I'll learn the how, I'll get some insight along the way, but if we commit to getting something done, it's done once it leaves our esophagus, right? And so it's, I think that, that element of being held accountable in football, because, you could say, hey, man, I had a great game, 10 tackles, 3 pass breakups. You watch film, it's like, no, you had 4 tackles and no pass breakups, right? And so that accountability was there after you even communicated any type of expectations. So sports was definitely a great foundation to not only know how to work on a team, but also learn how to work with different personalities, seeing different backgrounds, having impact on how they make decisions, but also being a level set that based off of one end goal, right? We want to win. Yep. So let's figure out the how. We know what the why is. Now it's just like, what do we need to do today to make sure that we get to that end result?
Yeah. So results, look, either it happened or it didn't happen in sports, right? There's no ambiguity. It happened. Either we won or you made the tackle or you didn't. There's nothing in the middle. And so that probably leads to the vision and then executed. Either you finished the task or you didn't finish the task. Exactly no excuses, right? And so how has that led? So let's talk. We talked about, hey, in the intro, you being a rising star in the financial service industry. So you've been in the financial service industry for a number of years now, and you've worked with clients as well as organizations, helping build people up financially. Tell me how, all those life lessons and choices have you focusing on people today?
Yeah. So as mentioned, thinking that football was going to be the end result, I even one of the terms that I want to update when it pertains to the NFL, NBA is, calling it a career, because that's not necessarily a career. I think that's an experience that you'll be able to leverage to create career type opportunities based off the income. But I didn't know that coming in. And so I thought that once football ended, I ended. And so stumbling into the financial industry, what I loved about it was really what you just talked about. There's no ambiguity. 1 + 1 = 2. So like that element of numbers, I appreciated. But I started at a Fortune 100 company. I was the only Black in the state of Alabama. It was the #1 office in the country. And I saw 2 things. One, it was the first time I met someone that was a recipient of generational wealth and generational planning, right? You hear about, hey, I want to have generational wealth, but it's another thing to speak to someone that was on the end part of it. Like, yeah, I actually got the money, right? And so, and this was the process that we went through. that was great exposure. Two was great training, but just within that framework, I felt like there were steps that were missed in regards of getting proximate on what would create a sustainable solution for either the household or the business or even the organization based off of what they're trying to get accomplished. And a lot of that was tied to financial education, financial literacy, not being readily accessible within a school system and things of that nature. And so my commitment, I would say, in the financial industry really wasn't one that I thought was long term. I was still 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I'm like, I think I still got a little something in the tank with football. But the more I saw how much impact we will make across the nation, across the based off of sure people have the right financial principles, have the right financial education from a trusted. I saw that was true generational impact, right? And so for me, I think that as I've been able to learn more about the industry and learn more about what capabilities and opportunities are there, I've really stayed on that same type of path. One influence I would definitely shout out is A.G. Gatson. I would say Birmingham's first millionaire, and his theme is find a need and fill it. And I saw a need, and it just wouldn't. I couldn't shake it. I could not shake shifting. Those dynamics of I would say the financial issues within the industry. And so I would say what's kept me in the industry is really those commitments that I made a decade ago to those clients that said, hey, I'm looking forward to see you accomplish these goals. And so it's been very exciting. It's been an interesting time to be in the financial industry because so much has evolved in the last decade, especially just with technology and how much information you can get on one page and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. And so yeah, that's what I'll say.
Yeah. So with like on a day-to-day basis, when you're sitting down talking to a group, what are some of the things you emphasize that you have seen that help people become more financially successful, put them on a path to financial success? What are some of those things that you kind of emphasize when you're sitting down talking to people or a group?
Yeah, regardless of the income, regardless of the wealth, regardless of the asset level, we first have to address their mindset around money. Because sometimes you may inherit a mindset that may be conflicting with the information that you are about to share, which limits their ability to be able to deployment. So based off of their situation, we first want to give assurance that, hey, whatever it is about your situation that you're looking to address, it's not necessarily your fault, because shame is probably the biggest element that puts shackles around someone's ability to deploy the information that they're hearing, because they feel like, why didn't I know this 5 years ago? Man, I wish I would have done this. Man, if I would have saved X amount. So let's get that out of the way, right? And so that's the first thing, mindset and then money. From there, that allows us to be able to address what their habits are, because a lot of the aspects around money is tied to really your decisions that you make. Even though money is black and white in regards of 10 plus 5 equals 15, but that 5 or that 7 may be tied to an event that created some emotions that you want to visit every week. All right, well, we need to know about that, right? And so there are certain elements that slowly eats into someone's ability to build wealth that is tied within their lifestyle, that unless we are able to get those two elements squared away, anything that we discuss is not going to be executed. And again, for the long term, because we haven't got to the root of the situation, which is their mind, and then we can get into the habits. And then, of course, from there, some of the applicable information around credit and investing and saving and budgeting and cash flow management, those elements will be better received because we've been able to, I would say, cultivate a good ground to sow that seed.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think for so many, especially people of color, for Black people in America, the mindset, and the habits are all generational. Just like generational wealth and assets pass down, the mindset and habits also pass down. Right. Now, not for everyone, whether it's good habits, bad habits, those things pass down for generations. So where those things are lacking, when we can step in and help with that mindset and those habits, then in some ways we break the quote unquote generational curse, right? Because then that family now can instill more, not only in their unit, but in future units as well. That's part of that, leaving that legacy. So yeah, so you mentioned like credit. So credit is something that I think, obviously something everyone has to pay attention to, right? Especially every adult. Um, what are some of the tips you kind of maybe sit down and talk to people back and say, hey, look, here are 2 or 3 things with your credit that you need to make sure that you address, look at, and consider on a yearly basis.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Credit, the adult version of your GPA. So it's that number that's always going to follow you that you got to be very aware of. So ultimately around credit, the first thing that we see is that folks are just not aware of what's on their credit score, right? Or like what's on their credit report. So there are a few free platforms, annualcreditreport.com, just to see what is displaying. The second recommendation that we always share is that of course there are different platforms that can tell you what's on your score, but we like this platform called CreditWise, and it's in connection with Capital One. What it does is that if you have anything in collections, it has their contact information readily available. You can reach out to them and get it addressed. But of course, the notifications and the simulator that you'll be able to get when people pull your credit, soft pull, hard pull, those notifications are very important. And as well, when it pertains to protecting your identity. So the first step we always say is, are you aware of your situation? All right. From there, if you have any credit cards, do you know when it reports? Not when it's due. Do you know when it reports? Make sure we get those 2 separate dates, because that could impact your utilization ratio if we have a strategy around it. But if you're in the process of saying, all right, I have some good discretionary income, I want to start building my credit, I want to be a bit more offensive, we may say, again, not looking at someone's situation. Of course, this is not recommendations what your personal situation, but we would probably look at getting into a secure credit card. That is a really good way in which you can start building your credit, ultimately using your own money and showing the bank, hey, the card, here's $500, give me a card with that as a limit. It reflects very well with the 3 credit bureaus. Another, I would say, low-hanging fruit in regards to recommendation is a platform called Self Inc. So you can choose 3 monthly payment options. And again, I say payments, it's actually a certificate of deposit. And over a 12-month period, they report those payments to the 3 credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. We've seen folks' credit score go up 30, 40 points within 45 days, just based off of the consistent reporting. And from there, it actually turns into a secure credit card once you get into a certain amount. So that's another great platform. I'm gonna name out a few more. I know you said 2, but I started rolling. Another one is the Experian Boost. So Experian Boost actually pulls any reoccurring payments. It could be your Disney Plus subscription. It could be your Netflix subscription. And you'll see the boost within 2 minutes once you get that aligned and connect the bank accounts in which those are reporting. And the last one that I'll share is that if you're renting and you have a relationship with your landlord, rentreporters.com, ultimately they're able to report your rent payments, and it is sent to the credit bureaus, and it reflects, and it's a pretty quick process. 80% of those that I just recommended, I've done. Rent Reporters, Experian Boost, actually all of them. Yeah, I've done all of them. Self, I've done it all. So anytime we make recommendations like this, we also experience it first, just to make sure there's no funny business going on. But these are all great back platforms that you could leverage to start building one's credit.
Man, that is absolutely awesome. That's absolutely, and so especially because we know credit could be a trap, and it's a trap that, back in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was in school, when it was just starting to come out, where they start handing credit cards out to college students, right? It was a trap because you roll up this debt because, I'm going to school at Tulane University and a lot of wealthy people, and we were not wealthy. And you start to try to, say, well, hey, I want to go out. And so you use credit. But then you don't understand how credit works, and it ends up harming you as a young college student. I know that may not be as prevalent today, because I know they put some safeguards in place that they didn't have back then. But what would you tell that young person coming out of school or going into school about credit, and then when they're coming out?
Yeah, I think one of the elements of I would say, evolution of technology, debit cards, credit cards, is that it looks the same. Plastic got numbers, right? And so with the debit card, that's cash. with credit card is really access to someone else's money. You're going to have to pay back with some interest, right? And so the fact that it looks the same, if you could just say, all right, I'm going to pay it off. We got to have a clear game plan on why we are using this particular credit card, because typically credit cards come with benefits, points, cash back. So there should be a targeted effort that we have in an amount, because one of the elements of building your credit is knowing that when it reports, as we talked about, we want to know when the due date is, but we also want to know when it reports is a utilization ratio. So that speaks to, if you have $1,000 limit, when that credit card reports, you better not have $301 on there, right? It should be a little bit less than 300, ideally less than 10%. So knowing that that is part of the game, right? We got to see this as a game. You're really getting a playbook to the game through this podcast. And so knowing that there is a gamified element to it, you just got to be aware of it. And so, because if you leverage that the right way, your future life decisions are not going to be as frustrating, right? When you look to purchase a home, when you look to purchase a car, like those aspects are going to tie into what's your adult GPA. And the last thing you want to do is say, well, I thought I did well in that class, or I thought I was doing well there. And now that delays your ability to purchase a home, and you don't want to get get your hand caught in a cookie jar, because I'm pretty sure that happened to a number of households during the pandemic when interest rates were low. And now they had the opportunity to capitalize on that. And when they go through underwriting, credit score is low, and they probably just got approved now. Interest rates are pretty much, tripled from there. And so I think that there is always a cost benefit to it when leveraging credit cards. Just know at the end of the day, I wouldn't, of course, there's an element of liquidity there, but there's a cost to that liquidity that could have some long-term ramifications if you don't leverage it the right way.
Man, yeah, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. So, so this podcast is Dads and Dollars, right? So you are now newly father of 3.
Yep.
Right? So how's that feeling? How are you feeling?
That's right.
How's mama feeling?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. I start with the last question. Mama, you all right? Cool. All right. The kids all right. Yeah, so grateful everyone's healthy. That is definitely first and foremost, and excited about that. Baby girl turned 3 weeks old yesterday. We have a 3-year-old. We have upcoming 2-year-old come August. And then, of course, Ayana joined us 3 weeks back. But ultimately, at this point, it's something to where I try not to have too much of an expectation when it pertains to what's going to happen. It's more so, all right, what do I need to get in place to ensure that I can have the type of not reoccurring activities, but probably the reoccurring like time, and so got to wake up earlier, more kids, bump that thing up another hour, so if you kid number 1, bump it up to 6, it couldn't, 5, I think it's around about 4:00 in the morning, 4:30. And so, but all in all, very excited. One of the elements about entrepreneurship that I do appreciate is, I had my son and daughter at the office yesterday for a couple of hours, and they were able to see, I don't know what they retained, but, I know that what they were around, and I look forward to seeing how that is going to shift and shape their decisions once they get older. And so that is, a legacy component that will always be proximate to every decision that we make is, really that generational planning element of it. But Stanley and I, we've had this conversation on the wealth is more so the information that you're able to deploy, less of, the tangible assets that you're able to acquire, because the information will be able to multiply the assets, time and time again, if you use it the right way. Right. And so that element of them getting proximate to how we're able to, disseminate information and share it with our audience. I'm looking forward to seeing how that matriculates into their life.
Yeah, look, that's amazing. Look, the one thing about, so we share a lot of things in common, even though we're a few years apart. We share a lot of things in common. One of the things is you got 3 kids. I have 3 kids, right? So you caught up with me now when it comes to the kid thing. But you're outnumbered, right?
Right.
So you and Disha are outnumbered. It's 3 of them, 2 of you guys. So one of the things I've always kind of talked to you about is like, hey, So this is dads and dollars, talk fatherhood, and husbands and wives and everything. When I was and I may have told you this story before, but for the listeners, when I got married, one of the men who were very, very influential in my life. I had my father, but I had other men who were very influential. Buford Williams, shout out to Buford Williams. He pulled me to the side, and he pointed at my then wife. He was like, "You see that lady right there? She is the most important person. Nobody else comes before her. Not your job, not your mom, not your dad, not even the kids that you will have in the future. Yeah. Nobody comes before her." Now, being 26 years old at the time, I heard him, and you obviously, I heard him because I remember it.
Right.
I remember it. But I can tell you, through the course of the time that we were married, she didn't always feel that way. Mm. Whether I thought that I was doing everything to honor what I was told, she didn't feel that way. Now that I can look back, I can reflect, I can say, yeah, I had a philosophy, and my philosophy didn't match up with what Mr. Williams told me. Mm. See, my thought was, hey, I only got a few years with these kids, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, I would tell her, I said, we only got 10 more years left with these kids. Let's invest, let's pour into them. We only got, just this is an example. Right. But what I didn't realize, I only had 8 to 10 more years with her. Mm. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And so one of the things I would always say to you, and I always do this, and I would tell all dads and dollars to do a better job at following Mr. Williams' advice than I did. Yeah. Because ultimately, that is, you want to do whatever you can to have everybody healthy and whole from a fatherhood dad perspective.
Right.
So have you experienced any, I know early on challenges, 2, 3, have you experienced those challenges of balancing entrepreneurship, kids?
100%. It's what resonated is, my definition of providing for the household and her definition of her thought process, me providing for the household is different. Right. And so I may have a numerical amount of providing. There may be a time element in providing. Right. And so, and also just engaging in conversations. And so times I would define my activities as I'm doing this for the family, but not necessarily seeing, someone said, he said, Isaac, whenever you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else.
Yeah.
And that element, I'm learning as being able to speak with mentors like Stan and others on being more sensitive to that aspect when it comes to your family. Right. And so, even on weekends, I have, this is a Saturday. I got one more engagement today, but after that, I'm shutting it down and with wifey and the kids. Right. And I'm even intentional, even with them on like, all right, y'all over there. Hey, pretty lady, you come over here. Come here. We're going to watch Netflix. It's on the iPad. They got the TV, but we're going to have our time together. And so I just even finding more creative ways to make sure that because what you don't want to do is feel like your purpose is being conflicted with your family, right? Because and it's all in the same breath, but it could feel like that, right? It could feel like it. And so it has definitely increased the type of communication that we have. But I would also say that I've been more sensitive to even the culture of the team. If I call someone and I hear their wife in the background, bye, I'll text you, I want to make sure that we cultivate that same type of expectation, because it could literally get out of hand. And then next thing you know, 3 years, 5 years down the road, the relationship could evolve. And you feel like you may not know each other at the time. And that's what we're, of course, looking to protect, but also I think myself taking on the responsibility of, 1, being aware of it, 2, being intentional about it, and then 3, not letting the world define what entrepreneurship looks like. Because if the world defines it as grind, right? Yeah. And sometimes you will allot time that should be allotted for family, but because you feel like you're missing out or you're not being effective and you're not being impactful, you're physically there, but you're mentally not there. And so that's even worse. Your body is there, but you're not even engaging at the level in which you should. And so that's something that I've actually stopped saying balance. I'm not looking for the balance. I'm putting in place the boundaries, right? To ensure that is at least honored to the capacity that it should be.
Yeah. I mean, so when you were saying all that, my mind was thinking, okay, yeah, balance, but I like that boundary aspect even more, because I think especially us as entrepreneurs and dads and husbands and sons and all those titles that we I think that there's an element of emotionality, and I don't even know if that's a word, that comes into play, right? So you were talking about being present but not being present, because we're trying to provide not only for today, but we're trying to provide for the future, right? And we're thinking of all the things, whether fear-based or goal-based, that can get in the way and alter and stop that. And even when we're present, we are still, sometimes we can sit and be like, oh, this is great. All my kids are here, my spouse, my partner's here. But then that thought comes in, what can mess this up? And so you're there and you're feeling all of it, but that impacts the relationship. That impacts the relationship with your kids. Then it impacts the relationship with your partner, and it also impacts that boundary or balance, because then you're like, well, I just need to push a little bit harder. I need to do a little bit more to get past that. And so I think it's a mix that a commonality that we all share. Yeah. And some people are more successful at it than others. I can tell you that my dad used to tell me when I was a kid, he was like, the hardest thing that you're going to have a problem with in life is balance. Because when I did something, I was all in, right? And it's like I get so focused and nothing else really can stop me with, that I pay attention to. And I've tried to remember, just like Mr. Williams' advice, I tried to remember that in my life, but I'm not always good at solving that issue, right? It's just part of me. He recognized that very early on in me. And so I think that when we say, hey, gosh, I'm ready to provide, I got to do this, then everybody else becomes collateral damage.
Yeah, especially and that's a really good point. And is because as you're mentioning the locking in, especially if you've locked in before and it works, right? Yeah. And you've seen results. And so it's like, well, no, this is how we get to where we need to get to. But it's just knowing like when to trigger that, or knowing how to create an environment where you can't even trigger it. Right. And so that's where I've been trying to be more creative. I'll say I put my phone down, but if I have my AirPods in and it's talking to me like, all right, I'll text you back tomorrow, And so there's definitely certain things that, even I'll say within the past 3 to 6 months, this is something that I'm beginning to adopt is I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow, and not feeling bad about it. And really like committing to, no, I'm gonna get that done tomorrow. So putting a process in, either if it's email communication, because that's been my biggest issue, is that get it done tomorrow. And so now I gotta have a checklist for the day. I'm not just saying just push everything to tomorrow.
Yeah.
but there's certain things that's gonna happen unexpectedly every day. There's gonna email you're gonna need to respond to. There is a question you're gonna need to address. There is a financial constraint somewhere that you're going to need to highlight and put some energy towards. But there's some elements that, even if you continue to worry about it, if you address it tomorrow, it's not going to actually change. So you might as well just like, all right, LIG it, let it go, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's good. So look, I think that for all young dads who have to go through like the phase in life, it's very rewarding. So I would tell you, every day that you can soak it in because it's rewarding, but it also goes by so fast.
That's right.
And I mean, really, you'll look up one day and be like, man, they are gone. And so enjoy every moment of it, and enjoy all the challenges of it. So one of the things that I wanted to just dive into, so talking about fatherhood, parenting, and sports, so we marry those things. There are a lot of people who have sports dreams, right? And want to be athletes or want to use athletics to teach their kids life lessons.
Yeah.
You know, because it's Saturday, like you said, everybody's going to the ball field today with their kids for some reason, whether it's activity, life lessons. You know, they're going to be the next, Magic Johnson, whatever the reason would be. What would be some of the things that you would say, hey, all right, as someone who's lived that, who went to that path, and unfortunately injuries kind of took a little bit of that away from you, what would you say to the parents and the kids?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So early on, I would say parents, let them choose a sport, expose them to all the sports. Every sport can complement each other: soccer, basketball, football, track and field. I did it all, and I actually medaled in a majority of them. Baseball as well. So I got exposure. And again, the younger, the better, because that's usually the cheapest, exposure you could get in regards of the cost of it. Definitely expose them to the different sports, but also be sure to keep in mind that sport is teaching them other things outside of just dominating that particular sport. And so the relationships that they're going to be able to build, the strategic planning that they have to do as a team, the overcoming adversity, letting their teammates down if they didn't swing the bat and they struck out. There's just certain elements of life that they're going to have to experience. And I would rather you focus on that. The ride in a car is the most important aspect of sports, especially as a parent. Oh, how come you did that? That is the moment. Like, that is really the moment. Them being a great athlete, that's like math. 1 + 1 = 2. You're going to work out, you're going to, eat well, like that. That is more of the machine element. But the majority of playing sports is mental. We work with professional athletes. There are situations, there's times we get calls before games. We get calls before the Super Bowl, and it's a family matter. And they're just trying to release it so they can go focus on the field, right? And so I would say to the young parents, definitely expose them, but also let the intangible element of the sport, let that build your relationship, right? And so now, if you're a former athlete and you feel like you got the equation, do what you feel which is you're most comfortable with. But also, different sports have different costs. And again, dads and dollars, right? And so I was just talking to my older brother. His daughter is in gymnastics and competitive cheer. It's like, man, hey, I need a stipend or something, man. This ain't this a good traveling and things of that nature. And so keep that in mind as well. Does my lifestyle support the ability to be able to support them? Because it's one thing for them to play a sport. It's another thing if they never see you at a game. It's another thing, and so that is an element in which just got to be mindful of. I don't think it's a binary situation, because there's a lot of great athletes that saw their parents sacrifice for them to even be introduced to a sport, and they become a dominant figure in the sport. And now they're saying thank you by, hey, here's a house, here's a home, and let's reduce the debt or eliminate it. So there are definitely stories there. But I would definitely emphasize the exposure element, the dialogue that can happen in between, and also the role of the coach. So in college, I would tell college coaches that they're substitute dads, because that is the adult male, and I'm just speaking for football players, and I know we have some female coaches now, so apply it that way as well. But that is the adult male in which they are having the most frequent communication with, outside of their own father, if not more than their own father, right? And so that is another element you got to take into consideration, is that there is a raising of your child that is happening with someone based off of the sport they play, based off of the position that they play, that proximity and communication is going to be rampant. the biggest thing you never wanted your teacher to say is, all right, I'm gonna tell you, coach, all right, what I gotta do? What is it? What time is it due? I'm gonna get that done, right? And so the only other impact that type of have is daddy, or you you don't want that. And so I think there are of course, the exposure, there's the relational piece, the camaraderie piece. But even as they matriculate through high school and college, because there may be some parents on here that they got some studs that's playing ball. The sport is a tool. The sport is a vehicle. It's not the end result, because at the end of the day, and this is something that I had to deal with in regards of my identity. My brother played professional football for a couple of years. He was all SEC, all American. My roommate, I went to Samford University. Some may say, okay, smaller school. My roommate got drafted, my suite mate got drafted, and we had a number of folks get drafted since we came in. We were Pat Sullivan's first handpicked class, and actually my suite mate is still in the league. He's going on year 9. And we had great athletes, but when I saw that I was not able to continue to play ball at the level in which I've always aspired, I literally thought there was no use of me anymore. Like, there was an identity shift that I didn't know was going to happen, and that can paralyze folks. And that's why when you see probably your favorite athlete in high school, one of the top athletes in college, like, man, how did that happen? There wasn't even a cultivation of what the transition was going to be like, soft skill development and things of that nature that's going to require you to be able to operate effectively in this world. Internships, those type of exposures. And so the sport is a vehicle, but it's not the end goal. And if you can balance that mindset of not, all right, and I do have to share this thing. I know I'm getting long-winded, but it's something that I'm very, very, very passionate about. So we always say that even a student athlete, that you shouldn't have a plan B. And that may seem controversial and contradicting to what I'm talking about. But when we say you shouldn't have a plan B, when you do even articulate, hey, all right, if we want to go rob a bank, I'm not saying we dazzling dollars so we're making money the right way, but just run with me my analogy. We want to go rob a bank. All right, we're going to go through the front door, but if the security is there, we're going to plan B. We're going to go through the back door and do this. What if the security is not there? That means plan A works, right? So if you tell the student that you got to have a plan B, you really telling them that plan A can work. So we're telling them, no, you're still on plan A because this is not a career, it's an experience. So you're going to have to make a transition at some point. So let's make sure you start educating yourself on when you do receive this money, what would you want to do with it? Oh, you want to start a construction company? Great. Let's make sure we get these certifications. Let's make sure you get to these conferences so you can meet these different professionals. Oh, you want to get into real estate? Great. Let's make sure. So it's going to transition to something else. That's why we see all of our heroes. Magic Johnson is a great example on the different businesses that he established. Shaquille O'Neal, LeBron James, right? Like the different individuals that have been able to, and rest in peace, Kobe. Kobe, his net worth was quadrupling at a whole nother rate based off of the decisions he made off the court, right? And so it's that element you have to start building their mindset for, because if that sport ends because of an injury, either because of opportunity, right, or just it's over for you. Sometimes that transition is such a shock, they don't do anything, they maintain that same lifestyle, money is drained, next thing you know, they went bankrupt and they're 34 years old.
Well, look, man, that's great lessons and great input. You mentioned transition, right? And so thank God for you that you didn't stay in that mindset that you were like, this is the end of me.
Right.
Because otherwise we wouldn't get the gift of Isaac Cooper. I mean, the transition that you use that energy, and I tell my kids all the time, hey, we take what we may deem to be failure, right? And I like the way we think of that as far as not necessarily failure, but it's just transition. And you took that energy and you've been able to share certain things with others, making impact in other people's lives. And ultimately, the Zig Ziglar says that you help everybody get in life everything that they want, then you'll get everything that you want.
Yeah.
And so you're blessing people with your experience, your talent, your knowledge, and we appreciate you for coming on Dads and Dollars today and sharing that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, that's it for our episode today on Dads and Dollars. Thank you guys for listening. As we say, please rate us Give us 5 stars if you got any information in this podcast that was valuable. You can go to dadsanddollars.com. Please follow us on our social media handles, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Dads and Dollars. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Dads and Dollars. If you found the information shared today valuable, please share with your friends and family via your social media. If you have a request for a future financial topic for Dads and Dollars, please email us at ask@dadsanddollars.com. For further information on your financial journey, you may purchase The Quest for Financial Independence, 10 areas of your financial planning you should not ignore by visiting our website, dadsanddollars.com. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Individual tax and legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance reference is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of these strategies. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Guests and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Intellis Advisory Group. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services offered through Intellis Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Intellis Advisory Group and Intellis Wealth Management are separate entities from LPL Financial.